Listen, there are so many topics that I could adjunct cover when discussing the brow chakra. And I've decided to actually focus today's episode on the voices in your head. I hope you learn a lot from our time together.
Hello, and welcome to the Constance Messmer podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in.
In my work as a psychic medium, I have come to the conclusion that the voices in your head have two sources. One, they're internal from you, or external from others. I'm going to start with the easy one first. It's when the voices are coming from outside of ourselves, when it's an external experience that's happening in our mind. Don't forget the brow chakra is intellect and also psychic processing of all the ways that we receive psychic information, because you process it through the intellect to understand and comprehend. In today's episode, in regards to the voices in your head, spirit can definitely, I've told you this before in the dedicated episode to Clairaudient, spirit can definitely penetrate our thoughts out of nowhere. Sometimes their voices kind of come into our head from out of nowhere. And those are the times that I want you to pay attention. Usually those are warnings or just checking in. And some people realize that they can develop this if they just pay attention. And then remember, I've taught you to put your hands on your heart. If it's appropriate, close your eyes and ask, who's telling me this? It's a great opportunity, especially when the voice is similar to your own thought in your head, but it just pops up out of nowhere and you're not even thinking about that. And then this random thought comes in. So I encourage you that if you want to work on your clairaudience while we're talking about the brow chakra this week, to really notice when you get out a thought out of nowhere, especially if it's not in your own voice. Sometimes spirit doesn't want to freak us out. It appears as a thought in our own mind, or also we don't want to freak ourselves out. We kind of got a soul contract to the experience happening. And so sometimes it's a thought in our own voice that comes from out of nowhere. But I would still encourage you to put your hands on your heart, make that deep, heartfelt truth connection and ask who's speaking to me, just in case it might be your higher self, or it actually could be spirit, the source. Could be any level of spirit, a loved one that has crossed, a guide, an angel, divine. This is when these thoughts in your head are out of nowhere that are coming from spirit externally into you. Another way spirit communicates with us is, as I've taught you, is when you're engaged in dialogue and you're consciously making a connection to spirit. We're going to get into that much deeper and more thoroughly when I go over mediumship with you, and also just inner psychic rapport when you're just having dialogue with, or, mental telepathy, if you will, with spirit realms. But when you're engaged in dialogue, it can be pretty clear who's talking. You ask a question, they give an answer, or, they show up and they're talking to you and you're recognizing that these are not things that you would have thought of talking about in your own mind as pondering, but it's really coming from an external source. Also inspired thought, when you're working on a creative project maybe, or you're just pondering a concept or a problem in your life, and you have inspired thought for resolution or a different way of viewing things, you might take the time when you get a really great idea to go, wow, where'd this come from? Now, it could be just from your soul, from your own higher self that is kind of connected, but that is connected to all that is and can deliver answers and enlightenment to you. But it might be that the source is external from you, spirit, another, angel, loved one, guide, God, enlightened being that is come to offer guidance in the project or the problem that you're pursuing and pondering and putting kind of out there to the ethers to get assistance and help, when you're thinking outside the box, if you will. So those are generally the areas where it might be spirit as a voice in your head. Now, there is another spirit, a source that you might not want to listen to, and you might want to differentiate and discern kind of the source of the voice. It's trickster energy. I think I've told you before, but I'm going to definitely remind you over and over, especially when we get into mediumship and honing your skills there. just because people are dead doesn't mean they're brilliant. And there's trickster spirits that are lower energy and astral that if you're, I kind of think of when people are messing with a Ouija board or not making a direct contact to a specific spirit, it's like kind of, I'm just going to tune in to see who's around and anybody wants to come and talk to me. Great. And, there's, there are trickster energies that are like, oh, great. I remember my Jesus story. Like I was thinking, God, this kind of looks like Jesus, but I didn't really tune into, did it feel like Jesus? It was really early on in my work, which kind of surprised me because I know the vibration of God. So I was like, God, Constance, you really screwed that up. Don't screw that up. So if you're getting these random voices, thoughts in your head that have negative connotations, that seem kind of cold or distant or not, remember your clairsensation. You're tuning into, how does this voice feel to me? What's the kind of the physical sensation? Is it warm, expansive? Does it feel like love vibration, or is it kind of flat, cold, odd? Just say, go to the light. I have no time for you. Get out of my head. That's usually when people are kind of two different areas, when they're just tuning in and not paying attention to where they're tuning in. They're not doing a direct dial kind of connection. But also, too, when you're constantly a curmudgeon, you might attract that whole experience because your vibration is in that middle area of darkness anyway. And so they're like, cool, I'm going to hang with that person because they're resonating at this crappy frequency like me. So I'll explain more of that as we get further into this episode. But recognizing that trickster energy can get in your mind too. Some people feel like, oh, the devil made me do it, or the devil voice. I don't really, whatever. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. It's the entities and spirits that you don't really want to have mess up your head. And so when you're having that experience, when you feel like you're hearing a voice that's not very friendly, I would call on your angels to surround you and help you and take that voice away. Just take it away so that you can get on with your journey and not be bothered by them. I encourage you to remember that as a constant tool when you're kind of amassed in darkness. Turn to the light. I think of the tarot card Apollo. It's light. It's totally light, but it's also provides clarity. So it can help dispel the darkness, on all aspects. So not only does it help you kind of get clearer on the trouble, but it pushes the trouble aside so that you can comprehend it. So same in spirit work, when you're being bombarded with negative spirit, you call on the light to help disseminate the darkness because it's your life. You get to choose who you want to tangle with and be influenced by. Another source where spirit is communicating as a voice in your head is when the spirit is actually of a living person or an animal. So clearly this is in sessions like when I do mediumship for people that are living, either non-vocals or animals, or even when I work on people and I'm kind of surfing their experience with empathic clairpensée when I'm reading their mind or picking up their mind. And so we might also get these messages through spirit realm that are from people that are living, whether they're right in front of us or at a distance, call home, call home, call home, that telepathic communication kind of thing, experience, right? So these are times when we can send each other telepathic messages, which I've done before with friends. And, you could do, I might have mentioned it in the episode on clairaudience, but that is another way that we might have voices in our head when we hear from our loved ones that are actually alive. And so I just wanted to mention that. Okay. So now when it comes to you and your self chatter, there is a lot happening here. And it's really important to consider what's happening when you're working on your mental and spiritual and emotional, right? And psychological well-being. So this is from a psychic's perspective that I'm going to consider your self-chatter. Often when I put my hands on people's crown chakra and which we'll get into next, and the brow chakra and the brain, I hear a lot. I remember one time my favorite listening to somebody was when I put my hands on my friend Robin and I did an initial Reiki session on her. I put my hands on her head and I was like, wow, I just hear Buddhist chanting like over and over. And she like popped open her eyes and she was like, oh my God, I'm chanting in my head. I am chanting in my head. She goes, I've got to study Reiki. This is so cool. So it's so fascinating. So I get the good, the bad, and the ugly when I put my hands on people's head, especially if they're trying to pursue something in their life and what are the blocks. And I'm like, oh, I get it. I hear all your self chatter. So sometimes in our own self chatter, as we're just going about our life, and these are our thoughts / voices in our head, right? Because our thoughts do become the voices in our head. So that's what this episode's about, is paying attention. So sometimes it's just contemplation and consideration about our life and what we're doing, or maybe if we're walking, what we're looking at, or if we're driving and we're, processing what the experiences that are right before us. Sometimes it's just noodling things, right? It's easy breezy, pretty. Those can be pleasant or unpleasant, depending upon what you're considering. So the other set of C's for your self chatter, another C, are complaints, condemnation, and critiques. Raise your hand if you ever have those thoughts in your head. Now, sometimes those happen because we're just kind of going along and we're noticing, right, that we're being judgmental about experiences, people, things, or things we see. And there's a lot of condemnation happening. Sometimes we're walking along or we're just doing our life and we're noticing we're complaining a lot in our head. Like we're really, upset with people, places, or things, or our experience, or our job, or our, whatever, our relationships. Did I say that already? And all those things, because that's where we learn the best, is interaction with others. So sometimes those complaints are just kind of bouncing around in our head. And I think Spirit's saying stop there and focus on those two, and then we'll get to critiques. So when you get, contemplation and considerations happening, those can be just like noodling things or problem solving and stuff like that. But when you're noticing they flip to complaints and condemnation, or you're just doing a lot of that in your mind, Spirit says to really give your inner experience your full attention in a kind, non-judgmental, and curious way, so that you can tune in to the basis or where these thoughts are coming from, right? So it really is on this other level. You're going to start listening to these little voices that are subconsciously trying to speak out to you. Because sometimes those complaints and condemnations are happening because you've avoided some areas of your life and something is unsettling, right? Or you haven't resolved something. And so, me, bring your little phone or your pen and paper or your electronic to record kind of what's coming up for you. This is especially helpful when you're like going on a walk or a drive. Usually when your mind is kind of free to, it's not engaged in a book or engaged in a movie or engaged in a conversation with another. You're just really out on your own and you're recognizing you're having this inner dialogue that's occurring. And so Spirit says in those moments, maybe write down what's kind of on a repeat, maybe that you're complaining about, or you're having condemning thoughts to others or to yourself or to life about, right? So, because then once you start kind of looking with curiosity as to the basis or where these thoughts are coming from, perhaps then you can begin to engage on transformational change. You might notice that there are some things that have been disturbing your peace of mind, Spirit is saying, that you want to begin to make changes and new goals for. And if you can't do that on your own troubleshooting, then maybe it's time to go to a behavioral therapist or somebody that can help you, create change in these areas that you seem to always be kind of nagging you, right? That always seem to be nagging you. Because in these moments of being kind of alone with yourself, especially in movement, these things can bubble up, bubble up, bubble up from your subconscious. Now, they certainly can also, when you're going to meditate on these experiences in your life. But sometimes when we sit in meditation, do you remember in the beginning, early episodes, I was like, well, what's your goal? Is your goal to connect with spirit? Is your goal to ponder a problem and come to resolution? Is your goal to raise your conscious mind up to God, divine energy, wrap yourself in light, relaxation, vipassana? What are you after? Nervous system regulation, breathing exercises. What are you after? So spirit's just saying there's a really beautiful opportunity in movement, and if you don't have the ability to move, then you just take that dedicated time to kind of throughout the day recognize when you're having your crappy mind chatter of complaints and condemnation and kind of negativity, noticing that when the thoughts are negative and unpleasant, or they're put downs, not necessarily to you, that's the next one, but maybe to you, and to notice what's the topic and what is begging from your soul, bubbling up to your conscious mind from your subconscious. What are areas that need to be addressed, that are really kind of complaining and whining about, so that you can pay attention and kind of rejig some things in your life. Maybe keep a journal. Spirit's so good. They're like, so journal. Keep a diary of the negativity. Just, but grab one of those little notebooks or your whatever in your phone or your electronic, and notice on each day when you're out for your walk or just whatever, even if you're in the tub or you're driving and it's safe to record or whatever, just notice, because you might discover that you're having the same complaints every day or throughout the week. And so this is your subconscious mind going, F&A, man, deal with me, will you? I promise you, it's like a nag, right? Like somebody nagging at you. And if you avoid it or try to brush it off or not deal with it, it's just going to keep repeating. And so it's really your soul in these moments. It's demanding your attention. Your soul is demanding your attention to be witnessed and cared for. This is especially important for those of you that are not really in touch with your emotions or try to look on the bright side. The Pollyannas that are like, I'm not going to face my grumpiness. I'm just going to, look at the cheery side and kind of spiritually whitewash my troubles and everything's fine. Where meanwhile inside, your soul is aching. Your soul is aching. And then you're wondering why things aren't working out or why, you don't have the best possible life, and it's because you're not dealing with all of you. So we've been talking about the voices in our head and when our internal conversations are either pleasant or unpleasant. Another way that our internal conversations or self-chatter can be unpleasant is when we have critiques, right? When we're critical. When we're critical, this pops up, as thoughts of like, oh, you can't, you're not good enough, or I'm crazy. Did you notice what I did there? I did a you and then I did an I statement. And I'm very curious about those things, right? Because it makes you believe that the I is a self-belief where the you might be coming from some other source. I would put that like under the microscope in your life and just kind of ponder that when those statements come up as I or you. The goal again is to kind of stop and listen to these little, negative, critical voices in your head. These are the parts of you that you might not want to deal with. They're, your kind of your unspeakable demons that you don't want to confront. But these are the voices in your head that kind of subconsciously speak out to you. They fill your head with grief. They sabotage you. They poison your mind. And I want you to confront them. I want you to, in a way, befriend them so that you can work with them, these voices, so that you can maybe honor what they're bringing up, because sometimes they're bringing and playing out of fear. They're fear-based, right? You couldn't possibly do that. What are you thinking? Who do you think you are? Those are things that could be fear-based. But when it's a you statement, I kind of wonder if it's actually a legacy that has been kind of part of your inculcation in life. I had to unravel for myself a lot of my self-critiques with my life and my work. When I looked back to the source, I had to recognize like my parents were raised by people that grew up during the Great Depression. And so, you kind of had to stay in your lane in my family arena. Definitely, I don't want to put anybody down. It was more of this is the way life works. And so you better get used to it, where I was like, that is not the way my life's going to work. And so I've shattered some of those glass ceilings kind of things, but other areas, they were there for protection and there for understanding. So I just am inviting you and encouraging you to notice those critiques, those self-critiques. And I know you know what I'm talking about, like, who do you think you are? You can't possibly do this, or you're not good enough, all those things. And just kind of see if you can, take the time to go, wait a minute, what's coming up for me? Where's this coming from? Was this a repeat pattern in my childhood? Was it a repeat pattern in my friend circle, right? Because sometimes we then go from family setting to friend circle that still keep us in line, if you will, or whatever. Is this the belief structure that I came up from a traumatic experience that occurred? Is this a pattern of thinking that I used as a protection mechanism so I could stay safe in my bubble? Or what is this about? And when you start to kind of confront these little demon thoughts or these critiques, I'm going to say that, because they're the parts of you that, and I think the demon thought is like the parts of you that are ugly and uncomfortable and negative, right? They're grief, they're shadow energy, they're toxic. Those are those toxic thoughts. When you start confronting them and going, all right, where's the source of this come from? And you may or may not discern that, but you can definitely go, what is it keeping me from? How is it keeping me safe? And do I really want to listen to this? And is it true? Is the voice true? Now, I love the fact that when you get these negative thoughts, right, you don't want them to weigh you down or hold you back. Instead, you want to just listen and then, like I said, unravel the source, unravel what it's trying to teach you or tell you or what it's afraid of, that voice, and then get on with it anyway, especially if it's something you want to do or a step you want to take or a person you want to meet or whatever. So how do you get on with it anyway? I love that Nike ad, just do it. Listen, I had to put that in my office for the longest time when I first started, and I was so nervous. Like, what will people think? And sure enough, after they had sessions with me, when I saw them on the street, they would avoid me because they were like, oh, I don't want her to read my mind. I'm like, no, I'm not, you're not paying me. So anyway, but also too, the way we get on with it, if you can just do it, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fabulous, go for it. And otherwise, it can also be like when a negative thought comes in or a self-critique comes in that's damaging, damning, and demented, really, then maybe what you do is you contemplate, the topic of it, and then you now say 5 things to yourself that are positive, that are actually the opposite of it. 5 things that you know about yourself that actually counter that repeat play. And stand up tall, pull in the light from the heavens, and really embrace and claim those 5 positive things that you know about yourself that will allow you to push through the stop that this critical voice is trying to create or do, right? So it's about these negative voices that are critiques are oftentimes, sometimes they're, these internal lies that we tell ourselves that diminish our power or that hold us back so that we can't enjoy and have the life we desire or choose to live. Now, these can be just habit of bad thought, right? That need to be consciously throw in the 5 positive things. And every time that negative thought, if you notice and recognize that you similarly have that same critique, there's that voice again that pops up, and just saying again the 5 positive things until you can start then replacing the negative dialogue with the positive dialogue. And so I remember when when I started doing my work and stepping out on stage and doing things, I was like, what are you doing? This is so crazy. Because I was always, I was slightly embarrassed. Spirit, God, you know this, that I was like, oh God, is God going to come through, or Spirit going to come through? And my face going to look skewed as I channel? And is my voice going to change? And, I never know the information that's going to come out, because I would do large groups and I would go around in a circle or go to audience members and I'd be like, oh, Jesus. So beforehand, I would be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Now that was me, fear voice, right? And talking to myself outside myself. What are you doing? And in those moments, I had to say, Constance, stand in your light, stand in your power. You were made for this. It's going to be fine. Spirit runs the show. You pull your strength from the heavens. This is not about you. You're just the messenger. You're just the Aquarian, delivering, messenger of the gods, and delivering the information. I'm not the source of the information. I just hear it and see it and feel it and know it and deliver it. And so it became like, wait a minute. So to quiet that voice, I had to listen to it, embrace it, and then go, all right, this is the positive spin on it. And so I invite you to do that, especially if the critiques are diminishing your power and not allowing you to do what it is you want to do. It's time to kind of rectify that. And first off, you have to notice the critiques as they come up in your self-chatter, in your voices in your head. Hey, as you follow my teachings, I've created this journal to be your companion. Your 11 Soul Senses is a journal for self-discovery. It's an invitation to deepen your connection to yourself and the world around you and others. This is a good thing. Your soul senses are experienced through your higher conscious awareness. Through them, you perceive the spiritual aspects of your environment, the energy patterns, vibrations, soul level experiences, and underlying feelings. I'm laughing because I'm reading a script and it's going a little slow for me. Fully tuning into your world in this way, you increase your awareness and you begin to live your unlimited potential. These are my words, but I had to write them down to remember them. This journal is for you to document your quest for self-discovery. This is a good idea. Definitions are in there to help you understand how you are perceiving through your soul senses. Don't forget, I'm all about contemporary language. Prompts and quotes that we've added guide and encourage you. The empty pages are there for extraordinary exploration as you connect with your own higher states of awareness. I think I moved my eyeballs away from looking at the camera. But listen, to get yours, I invite you, I'm encouraging you to head to constancemessmer.com and check out my shop. Listen, I did it for you. All this I do for you. You know that. I believe in you. You got this. Thanks for tuning in. Another way of listening to that critique or the complaints and the condemnation is to really give them airtime, because maybe there's a part of you that actually doesn't want to do what you've set out to do. And this is your soul kind of saying, you don't really want to do this, do you? And so if you stop and really ponder that, listen, when we get to the angels, I'm going to be telling you about the cool thing that angels do when they work with us. Our heart and our head have to be in alignment for any kind of project that we're working on, for the universe to kind of come in, manifest, help, jump in, and providence moves too. Your heart and your head have to be in alignment. So if you're thinking your head, like, I have to do this, I really want to do this, but your heart is not in it, then you're lying to yourself. And so some of those critical things are saying, you don't really want to do this, because you don't. You don't. So I just want you to recognize that you're, again, tuning into your heart. What is your heart's truth? And remember when I said, how do you communication, your throat chakra is speaking not only outside yourself, but to yourself. You have to be honest with yourself. And so sometimes the subconscious material that comes up that's seemingly negative is actually because you're conjuring it, because you're trying to remind yourself, you don't really want to do this. You don't really want to do it. And so in those moments, I'd really, really unravel that, because do you not want to do it because you're afraid of what you're about to embark on? And then do you just want to ask for strength, skills, and remember your personal best? Or is it that you really, really, really don't want to do that? And then you want to do something else or whatever? It's really about you kind of navigating your life and contemplating that whole mental experience that comes up as you're troubleshooting and going through your world and your experience. So, how crazy is this? I recorded this whole segment, this whole episode, and then I walked with spirit and I said, is there anything that I've forgotten or that I didn't hear you quite say? Because I often channel these episodes, and this one spirit has been very involved in. And so I brought that to them, to spirit, my helpers, which I'll get into when we go into guides, working with guides. And what came back was, yes, you forgot about concerns. We've been trying to tell you about concerns. So I was like, whoa, yeah, concerns. And so spirit was saying this is another kind of topic that might plague our thoughts, or the voices in our head can come out as concerns for people, places, things, anything, the planet, all this stuff. And so when we have concerns that kind of come into our headspace and the mental chatter, it's very important, like when we hear complaints and condemnation and criticism, to really tune in and give these concerns airtime, especially when they're on repeat, because they're not just going to go away. There's something that your soul is bothered by, and so it really is bringing it to your full attention and then saying, okay, what can I do to kind of resolve this concern? Now, even if it's just what small thing, small step might you in your corner of the world do towards a concern that you have. Again, it's kind of the serenity prayer of, well, what can I change and what can I not change and what do I need to accept? But when there's concerns that come to you, just noting that could also be another C in the mental chatter. Now, how about the unspoken self chatter? The things that you don't even talk about, that maybe you dream about. I want you to listen to your secrets. I want you to listen to your dreams. I do. I want you to ponder those, like the parts of you, again, the good, the bad, the ugly. Sometimes it's the negative secrets, the things that you've done that you're not proud of. Maybe you need to go out and make amends. Maybe you need to forgive yourself or forgive others. Those kind of things. And also listening to your dreams, your the good secrets, the parts of you that you really want to do or explore. And then what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? And what steps do you need to take to help you to the process so that you can, gain or stand in your power or get to where you want to be in life? With any and all of these, you know me, use your soul awareness, really noticing and paying attention to what comes to your mind's eye as a vision as you're trying to uncover the critical voices or the complaints that you're having. Let memories surface, whether from your childhood or last week or whatever, to kind of go, this is what this is about. And, also tune in with your heart feeling, clairsensation. How does this information feel? Is that the truth, or is there more deeper kind of information here? And even also using your soul awareness to maybe contemplate and consider your family upbringing or the source of the voices in your head that you're trying to kind of move through. I wanted to say negate, let go of, move through. Maybe it was a really nasty teacher, or maybe it was a really nasty inappropriate doctor or inappropriate friend, or just like any of these experiences, right? A mate, any of these things. I remember one instance, right? I passed a mirror in my grandparents' house. And I was young and impressionable. And I was like, I looked at myself in the mirror, as you do as a young girl. I think I was probably 12 or 14 or whatever. And I looked, and I must have paused a little too long to just kind of look at my face and check myself out and see my hair and everything. And my grandmother said, don't be so vain. And I was like thrown out of my being with that comment. And I thought, oh, I'm doing a bad thing. I can't remember how much later I brought that to my mother. I was like, God, she was, just cut me right down. It cut me right down. But my mother said, because it was her mother-in-law, she said, oh, that's because she was getting older and she was jealous of your youth. And so it was really good for me to bring that, what might have destroyed my kind of self-worth and my, this repeat thought in my head, don't be so vain, don't be so vain, to bring it to, I didn't bring it to my grandmother. She probably couldn't have processed it with me like my mother did, but because my mother did, I was like, God, she's right. That I understand that. She's turning wrinkly and I have this sweet, smooth skin. And so, it's really important to get to the source of some things. And I am just grateful for that. But when you can't do it with a person physically in interaction, use your soul awareness to go back and kind of what resonates, what doesn't, how does it feel? You might have smells come up, and tastes, sights, memories, voices. It's always the voices, right? And just use your soul awareness and ask for the link to look into your past, your personal past, to kind of unravel where's the negativity coming from? Now, listen, when it's pleasant voices, then that's an easy thing, right? But when it's the unpleasant, the put downs, the negative thoughts, those are the ones that I want you to unravel them, unrebellious them, unravel them. And, notice how long they keep playing on repeat. And if it's a bad habit, how are you going to infiltrate it with positive new habits? And again, the way you do that, as far as I understand, but you could research it out, is when you catch yourself having that bad thought habit, you replace it with like 5 good ones. And then the more you kind of listen to your positive self, especially when those put downs or negativities are just, old bad habits and you've sorted out the source, then you can change them by embracing the new thought process. Because remember when I said, listen, if you're walking around and in your head it's a negative bouillabaisse, this is what you will project outwardly. You will attract those negative experiences. I see it all the time. And then it also kind of is a storm in your energy system, in your body. And then it becomes, it stops up the energy in certain areas and just muddles with your vibrational experience and your health. Okay, so I also want you to pay attention to your habits in thought, not only thought, but also in deed, in your deeds, because your deeds, what you're doing, might be habitual from the source of your thoughts. And so there might be areas that you are not subconsciously bringing to your conscious mind, but you are perpetually playing those habits out in your deeds. And maybe it's time to ponder that to bring about change in those areas, right? So it's really noticing that your awareness of your own life is you deserve your own attention. You deserve your own attention. Sometimes we could be so outwardly focused that we wonder why there's, just some mental emotional turmoil going on in our lives. And then it's like, oh, right, I need to reel it in and focus inward for a while. And it isn't just, meditation. It's contemplation on these areas. So, I think I told you early on, when I do healing work, sometimes I can just bring their energy to a higher vibration and they can go forward and exist from there. But I also know we are humans on the life journey school of Earth, in my experience and others, that we learn also by understanding and by doing. And so sometimes the transformation comes from contemplating and sourcing and seeing, where was I? Has that been affecting me, and what change do I want to bring forth and create in my life? And so sometimes it is taking these steps of paying attention and being a student of your own life, if you will. On the surface, just be aware of your attitude. How are you? Do you wake up happy? Do you wake up grumpy? Are you grumpy throughout the day? Are you happy throughout the day? If you're grumpy, I would start looking at your thoughts and see what your subconscious mind, your soul, right? Your soul is trying to tell you, right? That's what I'm asking. Just listen to yourself. All of it. Good, bad, ugly. So I think of the serenity prayer when I'm pondering all these things that I want to change about myself or whatever. And in my experience, things I want to change about my experience. The God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Because sometimes there's experiences in life that we actually can't change. Remember, we can't change other people. As much as we'd love to, we can encourage change in each other, which is always good, especially if it's for the highest good. But sometimes you just have to, accept and pray for serenity. And of course, as you know, the only person you can change is yourself. And so sometimes when I'm looking at my own stuff, that's when I also use the serenity prayer or the meaning of the serenity prayer. Like, is this something I can change? Is this something I can't change? Working with that and loving myself through it all. Okay, so that's when it's your self chatter. But now I'm going to circle back around to spirit, when it's spirit. One of the things about the brow chakra and thoughts in your head, the voices in your head and the self chatter, all that stuff, when you're working with spirit and spirit communication, there can be, because it's working in that same realm, and especially if you're hearing it clairaudiently, there can be ego interference. So the whole mind playing tricks on you. And so you have to really discern about, when am I letting my ego mind take over when I'm thinking I'm actually hearing spirit chat, or in mediumship sessions, stuff like that. I'm going to really dive into that when I get to the topic on connecting and communicating with guides and angels and loved ones. I don't really want to cover it here. It's too much. It's too big and full. But I do want to let you know that can happen. And one of the greatest things you can do is to recognize, and I always say again, put your hands on your heart, to recognize, so that you're constantly in that connection and in that flow when you're speaking to spirit, because you can feel the difference of the vibration. You can feel the warmth, the expansiveness, and this is important, because when you start coming from yourself and there's a slight disconnect, it's going to feel different, the energy. But again, I'm going to stress that when we speak about mediumship and connecting with spirit. But what I want to talk to you about right now is when you are having this kind of this self-negating mind chatter or thoughts that come up, I want you to recognize that comes from your conscious mind. And what I'd like you to realize is that you can shift from your conscious mind up higher to either your highest self or like divine consciousness. And it is a practice, right? And because it is an experience, when you do this, you are shifting to a higher perspective. And this higher perspective, you start to recognize it is more powerful, it's loving, it's open, it's expansive. So, one of the ways that you could do that is when you're having this pity pot me kind of like negativity happening, or I can't, who do I think I am? Why am I so vain? Just kidding. Is to go, wait a second here, especially if you know that it's something you're supposed to do. And if you think, oh, I couldn't possibly do that. What am I thinking? I'm not good enough, all those things. Then all of a sudden notice that you're doing that and go, wait a minute. And then bring your attention to God or your higher self, if that's your preference. I always like to go to God. It's like, wait a minute. What is the highest source of truth? What do I really, if I put myself in the mind of God, what do I really know? And then all of the sudden, the true awareness will come to you, and it will be far more enlightening. You take yourself up and out of the sludge that can occur in your own conscious mind and bring yourself to this higher perspective. You can do it with intention. You can do it with prayer. You would just simply, it's a shift in consciousness, right? It's just a shift in consciousness. And the more you do it, the better off you'll be at it. And it's kind of the same thing about getting out of the negative thoughts once you've kind of disassembled them and realize what they're made of and where they're coming from and what they're trying to teach you. Then from then on, you're like, oh, familiar. I'm going to go higher. I'm going to be in the positivity. I'm going to be like, you got this. It's like your own personal coach, your own personal cheerleader. Rah, rah, rah. You got this. You can do this. And then you feel the rush of energy that brings on. You've got this. You can do this. So I'm going to do it with you now. I want you to hold in your thoughts something that you're really wanting to do. You're supposed to do. You're empowered to do it, but you're just feeling hesitant. And once you've worked out what the hesitancy is about and what that wants to teach you, what you need to troubleshoot, maybe you need to take a perspective on going, these are the steps that you need to take to get from here to there. And then I want you to realize and pull on the mantle of God, pull on the light of God, stand in the light of God, or your divine self or your higher self, whatever works for you. I just like to go the highest of the high, right? And just say, I really want to be connected to the highest truth. Flood me with your wisdom and your insight and your awareness. And what am I supposed to know about this? What am I supposed to believe about myself in this experience? And just really embracing that brilliant light and that brilliant higher perspective space and knowing that you've got this. And anytime you're coming up with the negativity or the concerned self-chatter, turn to that higher perspective. What should I do here? What's the highest good here? What's the best answer here? Now, interestingly enough, I am tiptoeing you into the next chakra, which is the crown chakra. So this is where I'm going to stop, right? Spirit, yes. Spirit saying yes, stop. Before you go right into the next one. It's so funny. Oh my God, do you need a recap? I think I need a recap. So, voices in your head, from my perspective in the work that I do, it's either voices that are internal or voices that are external. If it's an external source, it's often spirit, or you could even be picking up other people's thoughts. So that's a whole nother thing, right? But I didn't even mention that. But it's either spirit, and if it's spirit, it's good witch or bad witch. It's good positive spirits that you want to listen to, or a trickster energy that you don't want to listen to, and discerning that. And I got into what those experiences are like. And then I also moved through sometimes our thoughts when they're internal, it's contemplation or considerations that we're just noodling through our days. And then I got into if it's complaints or condemnation, that you're supposed to take the time to pay attention to those, because those are your subconscious mind. Your soul is crying out to you to bubble up and say, hey, can you deal with this in your life? You're not dealing with this. So listen to those, pay attention, resolve, sort, right? And then if they're critiques, whether they come from a legacy of bad patterns based from wherever, or they're just self-protection mechanisms that are put in place by you because you're afraid to do something, those, again, unravel them. Are they true? What are they trying to tell you? Typically, a critique like that, sometimes it's good information, because sometimes it is true, like, oh, you need to do this before you do that. Listen to that, move on. But if it's negativity, again, sort and solve. Where does it come from? How do I unravel it? And then again, the replacing or noticing when you can do the serenity prayer, when that comes in handy. And then if also it's a negative thing, when is the time for you to hear it out, sort it out? And then when is it just a bad habit that you need to replace with five positive things? What that does is bring your awareness up higher. It kind of overcomes the negativity until you can start repatterning in the positive, especially when that's a lie. Like the negative critical thing was a lie, or it was something that you were holding back or whatever. And let's not forget concerns and the importance of dealing with your concerns in some form or another. Great. So I hope you've gained a lot from this time together. If you feel that there's someone you know that might benefit from it, who's kind of a curmudgeon on the outside, so you know they must be kind of listening to the negativity on the inside, maybe suggest the episode. I so appreciate that you've spent this time with me. I think that spending time together like this just fills my soul up because I know it's what I'm meant to do is teach. I think that the world would be a much better place if people listened to their own soul awareness. So I'm grateful that you are working to listen to yours in all the magnanimous ways that your soul expands and experiences life. Hey, Constance Messmer here. I just want to do a shout out of big thanks to all the members. I am so grateful. And all the people dropping in and giving little donations here and there and super thanks and all that stuff. I really appreciate you. You members and you people contributing and subscribers are what helped me bring this content to everyone, really. They both contribute to the cost of production, and I am definitely grateful for that. This stuff is not cheap to put out. Oh my God. Oh my God. So every little bit helps, and I am filled with gratitude that you're stepping up. I am not necessarily a joiner, not usually, but there are environmental issues and other organizations that I do belong to and I contribute to because I like to see them persevere. And I'm hoping you feel the same about this work. I hope you put it into practice in your life. That's another way that you could spread this work and help change our world, which is what I think it ultimately does. As you know, I think if everyone tuned into their soul senses, the world would be a much better place. So when you subscribe, it's a big yes vote for the content, and it helps spread the work across the planet. So when you put the lessons into practice and subscribe and like and share, you help me help you carry the lesson beyond you and me. And I am just really grateful. Legally speaking, this podcast is presented solely for educational, spiritual, and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for medical diagnosis, treatment, or the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. You should not use this information to diagnose or treat a health problem or condition. Always check with your doctor. Thank you.